All right, everybody, grab a seat. We're going to get started soon, so just please have a seat, make yourself comfortable. Yeah, how you doing?
There's more seats up here. Like, don't be shy. You can pull the seats over too. Like, you can rearrange the chairs.
All right, we're going to get started. I want to first thank all of you for coming tonight. My name is Tom Martin. I'm one of the co-founders of Vancouver Legal Hackers, along with Joshua Lennon, who's here tonight. And so tonight is a little different.
Sorry, Tom.
It's all right. So tonight's a little different than the meetings we've had up to date. We're actually partnering tonight and hosting Evolve Law and Mary Juden. And so there's going to be a series of talks tonight, and Mary will explain that a little bit more. In relation to Vancouver Legal Hackers, I just wanted to say that we're very excited because we recently broke 500 members. Woo! Yeah. We're now 510 members and growing, and it's all because of you and your support and for meetings like this that you come to. We are going to diversify a little bit from the presentation meetings. We're going to continue to have them and have great speakers, but also this month we're going to start incorporating what I'm calling coffee socials, which are going to be more low-key. We just meet up, and it's going to be like a dozen or less, hopefully, because it'll be really crowded. But I'll let you know where the location is, and what's the name of this wandering dog?
Boof.
Boof? Okay, cool.
Can he speak?
She's got a dissertation later on who's a good girl.
All right, so that's about it for my spiel, and thank you for coming, and I have Mary Juden.
Okay. Well, first I wanted to thank Tom and Joshua for organizing this, and then also for Cleo for sponsoring the food. Let's have a round of applause for Cleo. So this is our third formal season of Evolve Law. Our exciting news is that we've joined forces with, in the US, it's called Above the Law. It's part of the Breaking Media group. So it's super exciting because now we go from our audience where we have podcasts and with sort of 10,000 people listening to the Above the Law platform has 1.3 million lawyers that follow it and other folks. So that's really exciting. We're not going to change much about Evolve Law other than moving it to this huge site and everything. We're still going to have these type of events where we have wonderful local ambassadors who, like Tom and Joshua, who organize these events, and we're going to continue to do that and have signature events. And Evolve Law, we're really just about trying to foster the type of innovation that you see with the growing group here. We've done events, we've done over 50 events, and this is our second one in Vancouver. We did one, I think it was last February, Joshua?
Oh gosh, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Seems like forever ago. So I'm happy to kick it off in Vancouver. I used to live here. I used to live on Bowen Island, so that seems like a lifetime ago too, even further back than February. So with what we're going to do tonight is we're going to do what we call Darwin Talks. So they're a take on TED Talks, and they're 5 minutes long. So we have people who are going to come up with and without slides. We actually have a surprise. Oh, I'm supposed to move. I'm not good at that. We have a surprise 7th talk. So we'll have 7 talks, and so we have two without slides. So Tom is going to MC them. I'm going to run the slides over there. And so what we'll do is we're just going to do it rapid fire. And then at the end, we can have Q&A if people are still not too hot, because it's kind of warm in here. Or you can just talk amongst yourselves and make sure that you eat and drink everything so Tom doesn't have to carry anything back to his car. And thanks again to Tom for Tom's help for tonight. So I am going to go over and pull up Colin's slides. Who's going first?
So I'm not Colin. But I'd like to introduce him from VLEX Canada. And again, I was remiss earlier. I just want to say thank you to Cleo very much for sponsoring tonight. We have this great spread business. So. Colin, without further ado.
Which one's forward? Just the button? Oh, sideways. Okay.
You'll want to stand inside the pink post-it notes.
Yes, we should have explained that.
All right.
I was demonstrating how not to do it before.
Ask me later what VLEX Canada is, and I'll tell you. I'll tell you more about myself. But right now, I want to talk to you about lawyering in a Sharknado world.
Is there a typo in there?
Sharknado.
Oh, look at that. Lawyering in a typo world. in a pedantic world where we notice typos. Okay, so Sharknado. Sharknado is a movie that came out, it's not really a movie, more of an event, more of a cultural phenomenon that began in 2013. To put it in context for those who aren't familiar with it, Sharknado is about a water spout that pulls sharks out of the ocean and deposited them all around Los Angeles, causing mayhem, chaos, insanity everywhere. The only thing more insane than the concept is the movies themselves and how they continue on to Sharknado 2, the second one. When it went through New York, Sharknado 3, oh hell no. That took place in Disneyland, or Disney World rather. Sharknado 4, The Fourth Awakens. That was in Las Vegas. Each series got more and more crazy, and you can see by David Hasselhoff, that sort of gives you the cue. Finally, this summer we were treated with Sharknado 5 Global Swarming. Why am I talking about Sharknado? There's a second definition of Sharknado. It didn't precede the movies, it came from the movies. This one comes from the Urban Dictionary. You can read it, but I like to read this one too. Anything that is big, confusing, and potentially dangerous, that probably shouldn't exist, but you still have to deal with it anyways. Welcome to the legal Sharknado. There's different flavors to the legal Sharknado. Some of them you'll be familiar with. Others are coming on stream faster and faster. The main commonality between the legal Sharknadoes and the movies is that they're just not going away. Some of the legal Sharknadoes that you may be familiar with. The 2008 financial crisis had the effect of dampening total cash available for big law permanently. There was a permanent reduction. Other things that have happened since then. Legal process outsourcing and tech-assisted doc review. We're taking technology and hundreds of lawyers and others doing work that used to be done by thousands of lawyers in law firms. For those familiar with the so-called Ontario articling crisis, where the number of positions available for students to train to become members of the bar did not match the number of students that were being graduated into the system, or the number of foreign trained lawyers that were coming in and being called to the Canadian bar. Jobs were simply going away. Of course, this assumes that you can survive your law school debt and the exorbitant fees that you paid for law school. These things just pile one on the other, on the other, on the other. Attack of the bean counters. This was a big topic of discussion a few years ago. We haven't heard much about the accountants, but they haven't gone away. They're still continuing to take work. KPMG, all of these, they're law firms by another name. And finally, the robots, artificial intelligence, they're going to take our jobs too, right? These are all part of the Sharknadoes. Most recently, the announcement of Josh Broder and his Do Not Pay app releasing 1,000 legal chatbots. These are the Sharknadoes that we deal with. So, what do we do about it? We put ourselves in the story, the same way that you would have this in the movie. You're the hero in the story. There's a roadmap for this. It's called the hero's journey. So we're going to talk about how you navigate the legal Sharknadoes by following the roadmap set for you by the hero's journey. We're not going to do all of this. We're going to pick 6 that are relevant to us right now. Meeting the mentor. After being thrust into this situation, you have to find some guidance. Congratulations, you're in this room, you've met one of the mentors. In fact, you've met 2, Evolve Law, Legal Hackers. There are others, people who are doing things unique and different. People who are already navigating their way through these Sharknadoes to build a future form of practice. People like Jordan Furlong, who wrote a book, Laws of Buyer's Market. Things you find on Twitter. These are the places where you're going to learn. In the storyline, you need to meet the mentors to learn what you're dealing with. But that's not enough. You have to cross the threshold. You can't just be a passive taker in, if that's a word, that's a George Bush word, I think, taker inner, of the information. You have to engage. Remember, this is your story. You're the hero in this story, so what are you going to do? Along the way, you're going to meet you're going to face tests, you're going to find allies and enemies. The tests are going to be things that question your resolve. You're trying to figure out how to survive in the new legal market. You're thinking of new ideas for you, for your future growth. You're going to find people who support that idea. You're going to find more people who think you're absolutely insane. So what are you going to do? There are people who will help you become your future self. There are others who would prefer that you freeze as your present self or freeze as their past selves. They're defining the market for you, but it's your story. Ultimately, you're going to face the ordeal. The ordeal is when you've gathered the information, you have your sense for what you want to do. Now the big test. The risk of failure is high. You're going to make a move into something new and different. How's it going to turn out? I don't know. But you're the hero of the story. Maybe you get a reward. Is that my 5 minutes?
Yeah, but you can wrap it up.
I'm almost done.
Yeah.
You're the hero of the story. Something's going to turn out well for you. If nothing else, you've now redefined a little bit about who you are. You understand the situation that you're in, and you're building a roadmap to go forward. Which brings you to the resurrection. You're not the same person you were when you started. You're far better able to deal with these challenges as they come up. This is you facing the next legal Sharknado. At the end of the day, when they tell your story, the final chapter is written, I want to see you on this poster of glory. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Love that Sharknado presentation. So next we have Matt Vong, and his company is Tally, and I actually had the pleasure of interviewing Matt, and that will be coming out later. But I really look forward to hearing from him tonight.
So when you hear the little silent-ish kind of noise, then just sort of wrap it up within a minute.
Sounds good.
Yeah, you don't have to stop. Sorry about that, Colin.
That's okay. How was that?
So as Tom mentioned, I have my own startup called Tally. I've been working in legal technology for a grand total of 6 months now, so I'm obviously an expert. And so you can imagine when Mary actually agreed to let me come up here and speak to you guys, I was like, shit, what am I going to talk about now? Well, I spent the last 10 years of my life working in healthcare technology, and so I figured I'd come up and do a talk about what I know. So slow to adapt, risk-averse, inefficient, and expensive. Probably sounds like stereotypes of the legal industry, but it's also a direct correlation to healthcare. Great descriptors for healthcare and healthcare technology. And there's actually a lot that we can learn from healthcare and from the adoption of digital health within that industry and apply it to legal technology in order to propel the industry forward. So how do you innovate in an industry that's known to be risk-averse, in an industry that's known to be slow to adapt, in an industry that's inefficient and therefore expensive? We can learn a lot from digital health and the digital healthcare revolution that's been going on within healthcare for the last 10 years and learn from it in order to propel the legal industry forward. The first thing is focus. Do not try to boil the ocean. Do not try to be all things to all people. Have an intense focus on your customers, on your clients, and solving a problem that they have. I did not say problems. I said problem. having an intense focus on the problem that they have and what you're going to do to solve it is key. And so there's a couple of examples within healthcare specifically of companies that have done a really good job here. Canary Health, they focus specifically on diabetes disease management software solutions. Oscar, they focus specifically on selling individual health insurance through state exchanges. Started in New York, now they're branching out to a bunch of other states in the United States. Mango Health, they focus specifically on medication adherence for your prescription drugs. These are not people that are trying to serve every single consumer within the United States healthcare industry. They're trying to solve a problem and deliver value. The second thing is that slow to adapt does not mean unwilling to adapt. 10% of baby boomers aged 55 or greater wear some sort of wearable device today, a Fitbit, a Jawbone, an Apple Watch. And 25% of them use online reviews and other tools in order to search for a physician, find a doctor. My dad falls into this baby boomer category. He's 60 years old, lives in the United States in a really small town in Wisconsin, same town he grew up in. He's worked at the same factory for the last 30 years. He does not like new technology. He does not like to branch outside of his comfort zone. He is a creature of habit. Up until 2 years ago, the guy still had a home phone with an answering machine and one of those like tiny little cassette tapes that you had to like flip over in order to use, and a flip phone that literally sat in the glove compartment of his truck. Fast forward to today, the home phone's gone, so is the answering machine, and so is the flip phone. He traded that in for the newest version of the iPhone. He wears a Fitbit every single day, and he FaceTimes me and his grandson on a regular basis, and just the other week he used that iPhone to actually book an appointment online with his primary care physician. Slow to adapt, but not unwilling. And the third thing is there is a huge amount of value that can be delivered through adoption of new technology and through continued technology innovation. Accenture estimates that the United States healthcare system can save $10 billion annually, each and every single year, through the adoption of digital healthcare technology. Imagine what we could do within legal if we got like 0.5% of that. There's a huge amount of value that can be delivered through technology innovation, technology adoption, trying new things, testing things out, seeing what works. And so let's change things. Let's shift things on their head. Let's move the paradigm to make this the new normal. Let's be known as forward thinkers. Let's be known as intelligent risk takers. Let's be known as efficient and effective. And let's deliver a whole heck of a lot of value to the legal industry on a regular and daily basis. Thank you guys. That's me. Come find me after.
All right, so our next speaker is John.
Right.
21
Looking forward to hearing
slides,
what you have to
5
say.
minutes. Wow.
Now, just show me how this works.
And just be sure to stand between the two things. And
Is there anything more you wanted me here? I mean,
you just click on the right one.
okay, look. I figured out last night that my speech was 10 minutes long, so I'm going to kind of kill some of these early slides. Don't worry about the fact that this is a slightly different thing than you read was going to be the case. It's still low-hanging fruit, and I managed to squeeze in a theme somehow on that. Okay, what are we talking about here? First of all, I am a lawyer. I'm a labor arbitrator actually now, so still means I'm a lawyer, but I'm not practicing any longer in the normal sort of way. I've retained my amateur status on the legal technology side, okay, but I work with expert systems, and I love them to death almost as much as quantum mechanics. I'm not sure I can make this work, but I turned it right off.
Yeah, we'll pause.
Yeah, I guess you better pause or this will be real short.
Right here. This one? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm being very unaccustomed to speaking. Okay, said enough about that. I went to New York earlier in the year because I like traveling, but I picked up legal tech there. And then I went to Chicago also because I like traveling. My daughter's going to school there. And I picked up the ABA thing. And there are two other things I picked up, and that is that clients, at least in the United States with big law, I don't hear so much about it here, they don't like paying for legal research. right? And they don't like footing what they call the costs of training your junior associates to sort of pile onto these cases. And that's a real problem, because that's a big bit of profitability or extra cost if you have to, if you have to swallow your costs of legal research. And maybe it's just that the clients are growing up. You know, you go to your doctor doesn't say, look, I'll research the thing, send you a bill for $2,000, talk to you next week. And their opinions, without the research, are at least as non-obscure as ours. Everything's a probability. Anything wrong? Probably not, right? For us, it's likely that you're in pretty good shape, right? And then if we're both wrong, well, the matter was never free from doubt, right? So we're giving them the same opinions, we're just doing a lot of research, and they're saying, why? You're professionals, you're the specialists, right? And it's becoming a bit of a problem. The clients will pay for an informed opinion, but they don't want to pay for the legal research by which you become sufficiently informed to give a good one. Okay, and I'm not going to suggest that there's going to be a sort of a menu of uninformed opinions, you know, they go for so much, and informed opinions go for something else. But lawyers are going to have to figure out how to deal with these issues. Otherwise, they're going to have reduced profitability and angry clients. The low-hanging fruit, that's the theme, is, I don't know how this is going to work, but I'm not going to worry about the slides for the minute.
You can just tell me advance.
Okay, yeah, okay. Advance this to the low-hanging fruit. You just went past it. Good. We're going to kill the next two slides. Low-hanging fruit is the firm's precious, irreplaceable knowledge of law process and the how-to required to solve complex legal problems. Now, this fruit is hanging all around, right? But I've said basically the orchard is largely unmapped. But here's the other thing. It's our orchard if we're talking about the firm. We own the orchard. Nobody else can come tramping in there, but all the fruit is still hanging around. We go in and pick it ad hoc. Merely picking this fruit's not going to be guaranteed to help you. But there are a few things that can be done knowing that it's there. What can you do? Well, for one thing, you can create crystal clear, curated collections of your essential knowledge. You can move this along. Past that, and back from that. Back from that, back from that. Oh, you're so good. Okay. Curated, clear, curated collections of your essential knowledge shared throughout the team. I tell you, people who've operated for lawyers for a long time know that they can't keep it all in their brains, right? I mean, even when we know the law, it's sometimes a struggle to actually articulate it properly, right? So go and put it down once and for all with the case reference in a place you can find it immediately. You'll solve at least just a little bit of that cognitive sort of distance that causes us to slow up. How about building our knowledge infrastructure so that people can go from a question to an answer in ideally a straight line? Talk about how that's done. What about going to light speed, which is essentially a situation in which you can use technology to give you more information than you ever used before to be informed. And then finally, we can dramatically improve the value that associates provide. Okay, question one, how do we do that? Clarity. Ambiguity is the lawyer's friend? No, not in this instance. We need to be able to take a look at what we know for sure about the law, including our how-tos, and basically nail them down. I'll show you an example. It's going to be hard to see from there, but this is actually a case map database that I've just used for a process that involves writing down the key principles of key cases. This one happens to deal with the duty of accommodation, which is the labor relations field. These are all issues here that are linked to the main body of the piece, where you are under where you write down the absolute straightforward principle that you want to remember and want to be able to tell your other clients. Number two is you can build straight line infrastructures. You know how the partner will come up to the associate and say, find me a case that says, okay, why don't we have 1,000 of those? Why don't we have 100,000 of those? Find me a case that says. Every time we read a case, we know what it says. And we could be structuring those things in a way that people can go directly to them, including Q&As and databases. Another database application, here's one of mine. What I did was I took all the medical information questions a person could ask a doctor about their employee in a certain circumstance. And those are all of them right there, okay? Click on one of them, it'll take you directly to the cases in this database which say when you can ask that question and under what circumstances. You might have 3 or 4 cases that combined tell you that, but you're just going directly. Okay, final one, I didn't think I'd get here so fast, is legal expert systems. This is where the joy will be once you get there. Use your database. You can actually put legal cases in your database in such a way that your expert system can go through, read them, compare them to the information that has been given to the expert system by the client or by you taking the client's stuff up in, go through 100 of those cases in just a few milliseconds, float the most relevant cases to the top, okay, and say these are the ones that match your criteria, and then actually after that, compare them against your databases. Kai was talking earlier about the heuristics, rules of thumb, things like that. Compare them against your rules of thumb to make sure the cases seem to fit within that, and then just go to work, right? And there's one other that you can read about if you want to look through the slides, and it has to do with the fact that we have, from our clients, we have certain scenarios we play over again and again and again. And it's happening in that office down there, and it's happening down there, and they don't know it down there, and they don't know it down there. And nobody breaks afterwards and say, hey, let's build up our intellectual property here. What are the factors that go into a case like that? What principles, right? And whatever. Let's build a system. We never do that because we're too busy, okay? And we're not going to do that. When we do that, then the problems with respect to billing research are going to go away, and associates, because they'll have access to that information. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are going to post all of the slides in the
Yes, we will be posting the slides online, so you can check that out. Next, we have Amanda, who is bravely doing no slides. So here she is.
I'm going to put my phone down too. No slides, no notes.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Go, Amanda, go.
So I am a mediator, and I'm in the pink mark, and not a lawyer, and not from the tech side either. Quite. So I am a little bit geeky and a little bit mediatory, and that means that I work with a lot of tech people and a lot of lawyers, depending on which side of a conflict I come in on. So today I'm going to talk about how conflict between co-founders kills startups. And so this is a really interesting thing to me, and it's based on a lot of the research by Noam Wasserman. Who here is a Noam Wasserman fan? Okay. Everybody needs to figure out who Noam Wasserman is if they want to have a successful startup. So he worked for about 10 years at Harvard doing research on over 10,000 founders about what the things are that make startups successful in high potential startups. So tech, life sciences. And so when we look at why startups fail, he looks at 1 in 10 startups succeed, and of the ones that fail, or 90% that fail, 65% of those fail because of co-founder conflicts. So we're looking at over half of all startups that start today will fail because the co-founders can't figure out how to get along. And that's a big deal. And when we look at why those conflicts tend to happen, we tend to look at 2 sides. And today I'm going to talk about co-founders who are similar, because that's the majority of co-founder groups. So the majority of co-founders are people who knew one another at college, knew one another at high school, met in an industry, got along really well, and now are going into business together because they share similar passions. And in this space, there are a lot of advantages. You have the same language, you have similar understandings, you often have similar broad stroke goals, and you can move very quickly. And in a space where speed matters, there are some huge advantages here. But then we come into some really big problems, is that we assume that our co-founders have the same goals as we do deep down. We assume they have the same ideas of how things will roll out in the future, and often we forget to have those conversations. And often those conversations are a little bit awkward and a little bit difficult, and then we don't have them. We know that maybe we should have that conversation about what everybody's toxic number is, but we don't really want to, and so we can have that next week. And so I've got a few confused looks. Your toxic number is that number where when Google shows up at the door, knocks, and offers you an offer, you feel kind of nauseous, but you can't say no. Right? That number, that like I can't walk away, whatever that number is, if for me it's $20 million, but for you it's $1 million and a job at Google, we have a big problem. And if we don't know that ahead of time, when those kinds of offers show up, when things change, then we aren't in the space to discuss things constructively. So if I look at a group that I worked with recently, one of them, their toxic number was 10 million. For another one, it was literally a job and relocation to San Francisco and a place to live. So they're students, they're similar, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, actually, you know, if you guys know this right now, if that's the deal you wouldn't be able to walk away from, you know, the other deal you can't walk away from is $6 million, $5 million for one of you, $1 million for the other one, and the ability to work at Google for you as the transition partner. So those are three very different deals. And so once you actually know where you all are and kind of what your cut point is, what your toxic numbers are, once you've had those really deep conversations, when things start to come up, you know how to move, and you know how your partners are going to move, and you can trust them. When you show up and you're like, here's the deal, I know that you want it and I don't, so how do we have this conversation? Because those will happen if you haven't had them before, when you're too stressed to have them constructively. The other piece that I find really interesting is often when we have homogeneous co-founder groups, we're missing key skills. And nobody is willing to admit that they're missing a key skill in the area they're working in. Or maybe they can't see it. So how do you tell your buddy, you've been friends since high school, that he's not so good at sales pitches? Or how do you tell the tech guy that, you know, maybe you need help because this feature that you're not able to do isn't actually so difficult? How do you have that conversation? And if you can't have that conversation, how do you expect your business to thrive? And so one of the things that I'd like to suggest today is that we have to embrace awkward conversations from the beginning. That space where things feel really uncomfortable, but we know we need to say them. The longer we wait to say them, the more destructive those conversations are. And so instead of being the kind of conversations that build our businesses, they're the kind that tear them down. And the other piece is that often we have to schedule those because we don't want to have them. And so because we don't want to have them, we actually have to calendar them ahead of time so that they happen. Thank you.
All right, our next speaker is Kate. And I also want to just say thank you to some of our speakers had to travel quite a bit to get here tonight. So thank you for coming. And Kate, you're next.
Is that working?
Here you go. Just click on the right.
Is it out of the picture?
You're good.
Evolve Law uses this quote from Charles Darwin, which tells us that it is those who survive are those who are the most responsive to change. But I want to use physics to talk about why lawyers resist change and what we can do about that. So don't freak out, although all of you seem to be pretty physics savvy, but I'm not going to use a lot of physics, okay? I'm a lawyer. I only got into law and technology in 2014 because I was facing a 50-day trial, and it was looking like the Common Book was going to be some 30,000 pages of paper, and I was going to need 11 copies. And we just didn't want to go into court with literally walls of binders. So we built a way to go into court without any paper. And I didn't use a database, and I didn't use any proprietary software. We did it with over-the-counter technology. It's readily available. So we had PDF exhibits, we had thoughtful naming conventions, and we had linked monitors. So I faced a lot of resistance. I faced resistance from my own team, from the other lawyers, and from the courts. But it was a good idea, and it was simple, and we made it happen, and it ended in November 2016. And by the end of trial, I had the people who were most resistant to using technology in the courtroom singing its praises. And I had the judge step down from the bench making positive comments about what we'd done. And here's what I learned. It is really hard to get something started from scratch when it's not moving at all. And physics explains why. F equals ma, which tells us that for any given force, the acceleration you're going to get on a mass is going to be inversely proportionate to that mass. So what that means is if you have a massive object, you have to use a huge amount of force to get any acceleration at all. Now go with me. We all know lawyers and the legal system are massive. I'm not saying they're fat, but I am suggesting that they have heavy opinions on things, they think of weighty topics, there's a whole lot of machination going on. So for the purposes of this talk, let's agree that lawyers and the legal system are massive. What that means is I had to use a huge amount of force to get a tiny bit of acceleration towards using technology in the courtroom and having a paperless trial. But here's the good news. Nope. That's the bad news again. You know F equals ma because it's inertia. And my father says you have to say it that way. But the good news is P equals mv. P, momentum, is equal to mass times velocity. And what that means, and you know this too, if you get a really big truck moving just a tiny bit, it's really hard to stop. It will go right over your toe. It won't stop because it has a lot of momentum. So again, if lawyers and the legal system are massive, what this tells us is we only have to get them moving a tiny bit, and they have a tremendous amount of momentum. They're hard to stop. And that's what happened in my trial. So to begin with, I faced a lot of resistance. And I had this wonderful moment. I used all kinds of different forces, but there was this wonderful moment when I had looked at this common book that they'd all picked and suggested and whittled down as much as they could. And I had worked out that it was going to fill 180 binders for each copy. And I said this in a teleconference, and one of the most resistant to technology said, well, no judge is going to thank us for that. We're going to have to do an e-trial. I was like, yes, we're in. So then we head into court, and people are still resisting what we're doing. But we know we have home court advantage. So my team gets up, and they make that e-trial platform sing. And boy, don't you know, the other side isn't going to get up and bluster at that point. They just start using it, and it sings for them. And very quickly, I have lawyers, because I haven't done anything complex here. I'm only looking for a little bit of velocity. I have them going up to the smartboard and marking all kinds of things on it, and then gesticulating to me to save them, and we're saving electronic exhibits. So that's my pitch. Let me give you two examples because I think you'll like them. Very early on, I had a moment where I wasn't thinking about momentum, but we had it. And there was this terrific moment when we're in trial and I'm at the back and counsel for the other side has just accidentally saved over top of an entire volume of the common book. And from the front of the courtroom, everybody turns back to me and their eyes are wide and white, filled with fear. And it could have been a moment where we ground to a halt completely. But I stood up calmly and I walked forward and I asked the judge if I could approach. And I just double-clicked on the saved copy of the common book, obviously, that I had built in as a redundancy. And then I walked away terribly quietly without making a big deal, which, as you can see, is not a very common thing for me. And one of the other members of my team did in a stage whisper, "That was awesome." So here's what I'm looking for, you guys. I know that as I'm giving you this example of a hard and clean example of where legal tech actually worked and we got some velocity, you're thinking of examples where tech is actually doing it. Maybe just a little bit, but it's doing it. Come and tell me when we're done talking, because I want to know your examples of it working, and I'll tell you a few more of mine. Thank you.
right, our next speaker is Jordan of Palace Law Office. And,
did
It's
you
gonna be
win?
very clear in the slides.
Yeah.
All right, which button do I hit to go?
I
The
think you
right
went,
one.
you came the furthest.
Cool.
Yeah.
Did Jordan come the furthest?
Seattle?
Yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
came from Ottawa.
Ottawa. Yeah.
Oh, okay, Colin.
Yeah.
Okay, Colin wins.
Give him a beer.
Morning. If you ask a lawyer what it is that lawyers do, the answer will inevitably fall into one of a few categories. Lawyers are helpers. Lawyers are protectors. Lawyers are problem solvers. Well, tonight I'm going to suggest a new definition of lawyer. But before I get to that, you might be wondering why we need a new definition. All of these terms were accurate 100 years ago, and they're still accurate today. But we all know that the legal profession is changing. Some even say that lawyers are dying, and there's a good reason for that. Lawyers are bad at what we do. It's true. A recent legal needs study showed that over 75% of legal needs go unmet. In what way are we helping or protecting those people? That same study showed that low-income households have, on average, more than 9 legal problems in a given year. When someone has that many legal issues in a year, solving those problems won't solve anything. Statistics like these prove that lawyers are, by any known definition, a failure. So tonight, I want to challenge all of you to embrace a new definition of what a lawyer should be. A lawyer is a legal inventor. Not just an innovator who hacks the system to help their clients, but a true inventor who creates new systems to give clients what they need. So how do we go from innovators and hackers tinkering with the system to true legal inventors? Well, like invention itself, it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort. But I can give you a few practical tips to get you started tonight. Practice creativity every day. If you want to break the mold of thinking like an attorney, you have to force yourself to think like an inventor. Take 5 minutes and brainstorm just crazy ideas by mashing 2 concepts together. Like if I said cheese and attorney, you might think of a new brand of cheese for lawyers. Or you might think of becoming a cheese lawyer, which sounds a little ridiculous, but Jennifer Jambor is a real-life food attorney, and that's awesome. Or maybe just take a step back, and instead of trying to come up with the best solution, try to come up with the worst possible solution for your client's problems. As you develop terrible ideas, you'll be amazed at the good ideas that are revealed. Or take a step back before you even begin solving problems and ask yourself, am I solving the right problem? Often we find that if we reframe our problems, they become much easier to solve. Usurp technology. I have no doubt that everyone in this room is comfortable with technology, especially the tech people. But embracing technology is only the first step. An inventor goes beyond comfort and creates her own technology. Are you a wills and trusts attorney worried about LegalZoom taking your business? Well, you've got 2 options. You can embrace LegalZoom and focus on higher level work, or you can build your own website and undercut LegalZoom by offering up wills for free. And again, that sounds a little ridiculous, but Forrest Carlson did just that, and it's working. Or maybe you found a great CRM software that you love, but you wish it was more customizable. Then take their idea and build your own. And this goes for any size firm and any practice area. If you don't have the skills to build it yourself, then come up with a design and hire someone to make it for you. This is a calculator we have. This is a calculator we have at Palace Law that allows injured workers to estimate the value of their claim. Unlike the CRM software, we didn't have the skills to build it, so we found someone who did, and our clients love it. And last but not least, open yourself up to failure. This is part of what educators refer to as the growth mindset, where failure is reframed as opportunity, and this is absolutely the most important tip that I can give anyone in the legal profession. But it's also the one I assume at least half of you are going to completely ignore tonight. And for good reasons. We are bound by ethics rules that presumably prohibit this type of failure. But if we as lawyers continue to limit ourselves to practices that have been tested and perfected in other industries, then the 21st century will be our last. And here's the secret. If you experiment like an inventor, failure will help your career, not end it. Because experimenting doesn't mean trying something crazy and hoping you don't get disbarred. It means trying something small, adjusting, failing, adjusting, and trying again. And when you open yourself up to failure, you plan to fail, and you mitigate the consequences. A few months ago at Palace Law, we started a new project, and we put a lot of effort into it to allow our clients to text us easier. And during the process, our clients were all enthusiastic and excited to be a part of this program. But after it launched, less than 3 of my clients have used it. In a lot of ways, that was a failure. But out of the ashes of that project, we started a new one. And in about a month, our clients will start getting automatic notifications about updates in their case. And that project, it might fail too. But whatever happens, we're going to adjust, and we're going to try again, because that's what lawyers do. So I just took 5 minutes of your time, and now I'm going to ask for 5 more. Not another talk, though. But tomorrow when you show up to work, close your door, turn off your phone, and for 5 minutes, just think about one of the ideas you've heard from anyone tonight. And if you haven't already done so, start redefining yourself as a legal inventor. Thank you.
Now we have our surprise.
Yeah, our surprise speaker tonight. Before we get to him, I just want to say thank you to Mark and Kami, one of our co-founders, who's out there making sure that our stream is active. But our mystery speaker tonight is none other than my co-founder, Joshua Lennon.
Hi, everybody. So I actually went to prepare a talk for tonight, and I ran into a problem, and that's I couldn't find the material that I wanted to talk about tonight. And the material is legal tech startups that focus on blockchain technology. So we all know what the blockchain is, right? It's a system of cryptographic record keeping that grabs distributed ledgers, packages them up into blocks, and then strings them all together. It's blocks in a chain, hence the name blockchain. And it's become this explosive phenomenon that's pretty much impacting every industry around the world because it creates basically an unhackable, unalterable system of record keeping. That's somewhat interesting if you're focusing on things like financial transactions, securities, banking, healthcare records, real estate transactions, pretty much anything involving the transfer of IP or identity could theoretically be linked to a blockchain. And we've seen experiments happening with these right now in all of those industries that I mentioned. What we haven't really seen are a lot of experiments with blockchains relating to legal technology. I can only find 2, and one isn't even off the ground yet. One is Agrello. It is a smart contract tool that floated what's called an ICO. That's an initial coin offering, where they raised millions of dollars using the blockchain as their own fundraising mechanism. The other one out there is a tool called Elixir. It's formerly known as LawBot, and it's a chatbot out of the UK that was going to float an initial coin offering until they realized that pretty much basically a first world country in the world has slammed the door on that via regulation, and now it's a security and you can't raise money that easily. That's just about it. There are a couple other smart contract systems out there. They're all experimental right now and not really open to the market, which means there's this huge gap where we're not seeing blockchain technology being utilized within the legal technology industry. And I think that's frustrating because any problem we approach right now, whether it be trust accounting for lawyers, where there's an issue of trust, whether it be real estate transaction and whether or not a quick claim title is needed, whether we are looking at the idea of joint ventures and accountability between untrusting partners, all of these could potentially be solved with blockchain technology. And so as I prepared for this talk and I took a look at the fact that, for example, the Canadian Securities Administration has set up a regulatory sandbox where upon application you could basically ignore the rules of securities relating to your legal tech startup around blockchain. That exists and nobody in BC is taking advantage of it. The BC Securities Commission's legal tech team has just last week initiated an investment fund for people who want to invest in blockchain equities out there. And that's an example of something that could involve lawyers right now. No legal tech company is taking advantage of that. Christine Duhame, a Vancouver lawyer who specifically focuses on financial technologies and is the founder of the Digital Finance Institute, is basically out there banging the drum by herself right now on the fact that there is a need for legal technology and the blockchain to help in situations like refugee crises and verification of identity for refugees, or fund transfers for those same refugees, a case where we can have unalterable records that protect these individuals, and nobody is building those solutions. So my Darwin talk today failed because the tools haven't been built yet. And that's why I have no slides. What I recommend is that if you are working on a solution where consistency, trust, and accountability are hallmarks of the solution you want to build, look towards the blockchain. It may be a potential technology for you to utilize, and I'm happy to connect you with several resources that are out there right now, including Integra Hyperledger, which is an open source consortium of legal technology, law schools, and US legal tech companies that are building these situations like that, and the Accord Foundation, which is a smart contract tool that's being built using them as well. All of these are resources that I have direct connections to, and I would like to offer them to you to build the tools that I could not find on Google. Thank you very much.
So in parallel with my existing tech startup, I'm also planning to build.
Do you mind standing up? Come up here in front of the camera. Yeah, in between the post-it notes, please. Yeah. There we go, close.
So in parallel with my tech startup in the immigration world, I'm also planning on my blockchain application that I was planning on including the initial coin offering aspect of it. And had I prepared to do a talk, what I was really going to talk about is how the initial coin offering could be used as a usage token to avoid the security issue. And in the terms of legal services, what my plan is, because I work in the immigration space, and immigration is not something that happens overnight, it's a journey that you plan over a few years. If you were to have somebody buy your token, you can essentially sell them services at a discounted rate for them to cash in the future, and therefore it's not an investment, you're actually just giving them a discount on services. So that was really what I'm planning on doing.
Can I throw another idea out there?
Yeah.
So we have the idea of financial sponsorship for immigrants into Canada as well, right?
Yeah.
And that's another situation where we could use a smart contract. So can you prove you have the resources? Well, yes, I put them into this smart contract escrow, and this money is set aside for the time period of my immigrant kind of proving themselves to Canada. There's another instance where we could use blockchain technology. It's anytime there's like time, complexity, identity, all of these really wrap into that.
Yeah, and then also anti-money laundering.
Absolutely, right.
So people that are coming here, they need to bring their money to Canada. You can tie that in with the anti-money laundering aspect.
You can link the sources, you can link the identity linked to it, the financial institutions can verify it. So the experiments are happening. The fact that legal tech is not a part of it, I think, is the problem.
It's over.
Yeah.
And we're done. Wow, you are strict as a timekeeper. Holy
Went
cow.
past the little things.
Yeah, are we still broadcasting?
That's a hard stop.
All right.
So I would like to talk about it later for sure.
Absolutely.
Joshua, what about in the U.S.? Like Cognate so you're saying you can't find anything in Canada?
Yes,
okay.
yeah. And there was an article in the Globe and Mail from January of this year that listed Canada as the third top country for blockchain startups. When you look at the Canadian Blockchain Association, they only list 18, and none of them are legal related. So
there's a lot in the U.S. I just interviewed Mark Oblad from ValQ, so it's like a 5-part series in Forbes. So if you Google my name and Forbes, it'll show up. I think the 5th one goes tomorrow.
Yeah, nice.
Actually, Joshua, what about the new legal consortium blockchain?
So
Integra
that
Ledger.
actually is Integra Hyperledger.
Okay.
They were launched at ILTA just last month. I'm an advisor, so full disclosure there. But I think they really have some legs behind them, and it's a very open system that's easy to build upon for either both a public or private blockchain. And I don't get anything for telling you about that.
It's a nonprofit.
There's some guys starting up one in Kelowna, I think, called Blockcat.
Oh, I haven't heard about this.
It's supposed to be a marketplace for Ethereum-based smart contracts, where the idea is that developers would create common smart contracts suitable to consumer needs.
Okay.
This would be a marketplace to just sell them.
So this is a Blockcat?
Blockcat, as in
Okay, so like a black cat, but block cat. So this is, for those playing from home, from Nate Russell, a Kelowna-based startup that will focus on smart contracts on the Ethereum blockchain, which is one of the common blockchains that are out there. I believe it runs on Hyperledger as well, doesn't it? Ethereum? Okay.
Do some sort of, I don't know.
So that's another one, and they're specifically built for financial transactions, including smart contracts. We did see, for example, that the top 5 banks in Canada, under Project Jasper, took a look at blockchain as a payment system, but found that it was not yet mature enough to roll out nationwide. They found that there were single points of failure that needed to be accounted for in the technology before they would roll it out to their customers. It doesn't mean they're not looking at it. What they're saying is it needs to be wider adoption before it becomes a system big enough for them.
Cool.
Anything else?
Awesome.
All right, thank you for letting me scoop in.
Well, thank you again to Legal Hackers here. Oh, I'm supposed to. Very bad at that. I'd just like to be a talking head off to the side. Thank you all for sitting through all of the talks. Thank you to all of you who prepared talks. They were awesome. And so please, we're going to put the video up. The slides will go up. But if you want to record your talk, I loved yours. I think that's. I've lived yours. So thank you all, and please come over here and finish all of this. Excellent.